and welcome to Maths Appeal. I'm Susan Okereke.
And my name is Bobby Seagull.
And we are maths teachers on a mission to show that maths is for everyone.
And if you're a newcomer to our Maths Appeal podcast and you don't love maths, but you want to grow your confidence, thank you for joining us.
And whether you're a maths teacher or a maths fan or a parent or an adult or just someone who wants to brush up on their maths skills, everyone is welcome, especially people who find maths quite challenging.
Definitely. And we're incredibly excited about our partnership with the charity National Numeracy and organisation Experian.
Just to let you know how it works with regards to every episode, we have a maths problem that we solve. We also have a guest specifically connected to National Numeracy, the series, and we also have a maths fact from our very own Bobby.
And our special guest today is a National Numeracy ambassador. His name is Timi Merriman-Johnson. And Timi is actually an award-winning financial content creator. He's a podcaster, author and founder of Mr. Money Jar, which is a UK-based financial education company.
And his podcast, the Mr. Money Jar Show, features individuals and organisations who are using money to create positive impact. And he kind of really wants to help people with their personal finance.
So this episode, we want to have a focus on savings and banking. And we think that is a really important topic in the current climate. Because, you know, right now, there is a cost of living crisis going on. Interest rates are going up. There's pressure on mortgage rates. Monthly payments, borrowing costs are going up, and all this is within an environment of rising inflation. And again, Susan, we know that from our schools, you know, fellow teachers, families of children, it's a really tough environment for everyone.
Yeah, and also, especially if you're not that confident with maths, it can be really daunting to try and improve and try and work out how to kind of get better with your personal finance if you're not feeling confident yourself. So this is kind of why I wanted to show the connection between maths and personal finance. And if you can build your confidence here, it should hopefully help you bigger picture with your money.
Absolutely. And that's always, again, one of the missions of Maths Appeal. Make maths fun, but also show you actually it's really important.
Really, really important. But first, before we go into sort of that, it is time to set our maths problem for this episode. And as you are aware, for those regular listeners, you already know the structure of what we do. But if you're new, it's always worth kind of going through the checklist. What we try to do in Maths Appeal is to give a structure, a format on how to attempt and how to go forward with maths problems. A lot of the time, especially if you're not feeling confident with maths, you think that the answer comes out of the air, but actually confident mathematicians have a checklist emotionally of what they're doing before they even start to do any maths. We wanted to share that with you. So what we have is a first set of questions. Before you do any maths, before you even attempt any mathematics, you're thinking to yourself, how do I feel once I've heard that problem? So how are you feeling when you hear the problem? What's going on within you? Are you feeling any kind of butterflies or anything? Also, then you're thinking, does the question make sense? Are there any questions you want to ask around the question before you proceed? And then you're thinking to yourself, what maths topics are in this question? So you're like priming yourself in your brain, what's firing to help you attempt the question.
And then actually, while you're attempting the question, there are also things that you should think about. Again, normally when I look at a problem, I try and think, what facts do I know from the question itself? And then I'm trying to think, are there any sort of rules or formula that I need to apply potentially? And then I'll be thinking, actually, are there facts that you can sort of derive from the problem? And then finally, I think, I think I'm in a position to tackle the question.
So, Bobby, are we ready to tackle today's problem?
Yes, pen and paper needed.
And
please.
I'd always recommend a calculator. We like tools to support your maths here as well, so don't feel bad about having a calculator.
Or an abacus if you're that way inclined.
Yeah. Or you could use an Excel spreadsheet, depending on the question, obviously.
Or other products and services from other providers. Okay, so our problem for today's episode is this. Susan leaves £3,000 in the bank for 2 years. It earns compound interest of 2% per year. Calculate the total amount Susan has in the bank at the end of the 2 years. So I'll say it one more time. So Susan leaves £3,000 in the bank for 2 years. and it earns compound interest at 2% per year. So your task is to calculate the amount Susan has in the bank at the end of the 2 years.
To put a bit of context around this problem, this is actually a GCSE problem. So sort of 16-year-olds would be sort of doing this at the end of their secondary school careers. But compound interest is such a useful thing for everyone to understand. You need it when you're thinking about loans and when you're thinking about saving. And that is something we will kind of go through in more detail when we do the solution.
But while you're thinking about that compound interest problem, which we're going to tackle shortly, we're going to meet our guest, Timi Merriman-Johnson. It's really great to have you join us, Timi.
Thank you very much for having me, Bobby and Susan.
You're known as Mr. Money Jar, fantastic name. So how did this name come about?
This actually took me a really long time to come up with it. It was a few years ago, it was back in 2019. I was very sure that I wanted the name to have the word money in it, just so that people could find me. And I guess I went with Money Jar because I think it connotes kind of saving and setting money aside, and I wanted to come up with a name that was accessible and would appeal to people. But then also my surname is Merriman-Johnson, and so it's sort of a play on my name. I'm Mr. MJ in both worlds, both in real life and when it comes to finance. I like it when people realize that.
So we know that you're actually well renowned for using everyday analogies like Pokemon and Nando's to help make finance come to life for your audience. How do you think this really helps them to connect with your content and your matter?
Yeah, I've been doing this for a few years now, and I think one of the things that I've realized is, it's just the way it is. Money is perceived by a lot of people to be, quite a serious topic with a capital S and a capital T, and so I just see it as my goal to make learning about it as fun or as accessible as possible. I don't think that there is an understanding gap. I think that most people, if they had financial topics presented to them in a way that they understood, would get it. I just think that there's an information gap. And so what I do is I use information that people already know about, like the different levels of spiciness at Nando's, and then I mash that together with a financial topic like income tax brackets, and that's where the learning happens. And it works pretty well. Even the fact that I'm on social media is kind of the same thing. Mr. Money Jar wasn't actually called Mr. Money Jar in the beginning. It was just called Money Jar, and it was a blog, which unfortunately nobody read. But the decision to go onto social media, Instagram, TikTok and that sort of thing, is just to go to where people were and to give them the information where they hang out, essentially.
Can I ask, how did you even get into this? Like, what was your journey to this point?
That's a great question. Thank you. Do you know what? I've always been naturally curious about money. I've been curious about how investing works, how the financial system works, just because no matter what age you are, no matter what you're doing in your life, money is going to be a part of it. And when I was at university, I had a student bank account. I was getting student loan. When I was a young person, I just started working. I started to earn a salary for the first time, started paying into a pension for the first time. So I had this sense that I was interacting with money quite a lot, but I didn't understand a lot about how these systems worked. But I would say what really piqued my interest was my first job out of university, which was at a financial PR company. I was on the research team, and many of our clients were investment houses, high street banks, and had some sort of financial link. And so I had to become a subject matter expert, not just in the public relations side of things, but in what our clients did in order to be good at my job. And you just fast forward several years of just, listening to podcasts, reading books, trying things, people asking me questions, and then me learning about those things. And here we are. And there's always something new to learn about when it comes to money. It's a very fast moving area.
It's great you're using your knowledge to help people. I think it's wonderful.
I think you've got to. The things that we, enjoy today, the rights, the privileges that we enjoy, have come about because the people who came before us helped us. And I don't think the world just becomes better by itself. The world becomes better through all of us collectively trying to make it better. And if we don't, then it will just stay the same. So I think if you can, like, why not try and add, whether it's to to people or to planet. And I guess I'm focusing on the people side.
Wonderful. That's a really lovely positive attitude. So our podcast with Susan is obviously called Maths Appeal, and you are Mr. Money Jar. So what would you say the link is between maths and numeracy and money and personal finances?
For me, number confidence and confidence with your finances goes hand in hand. So if you're comfortable with mental arithmetic, that has everyday applications. For example, going to a supermarket, being able to keep a running total of the different things that you're buying. If you understand percentages and how they work, then that can apply to everything from tax to investments and investment returns. So I think if you feel comfortable with numbers, if you have a growth mindset when it comes to learning about numbers, then you'll automatically see a payoff when it comes to your finances. And a lot of the work that you and I do, Bobby, with National Numeracy, something that I'm really big on is being able to use tools as well to help you, whether it's on the math side or the personal finance side. So do you have to do everything in your head? No. Big fan of calculators, online calculators, spreadsheets, just anything that gets you engaged in the topic, really.
Right. And so we're currently living in a cost of living crisis. And so there are people who are very worried about their personal finances right now. And so for people who are thinking maybe about getting a loan, which, for some people that's a way to help, like, what advice would you give them?
What we're in right now is a high inflationary period kind of environment. And there are some longer term reasons to do with this, but in the media, it's to do with a lot of money entering into the system during COVID and, supply chain disruption as a result of the pandemic and all of the lockdowns. And so things that didn't used to cost as much are now quite expensive. And when inflation is high, when the rate at which things are getting more and more expensive speeds up, the central bank, the Bank of England, reacts to this by raising interest rates. I've done some content about this on my page, actually. When we raise interest rates, this has two effects. On the money that we borrow, it becomes more expensive to borrow. So you can expect to see higher APRs on things like credit cards and interest rates on mortgages. So where interest rates are going up, it can be a good idea to keep debt at 0% if you can, or if you're carrying high interest debt, to try and pay it off as quickly as possible, because the cost of having that debt on average is going to be higher now than it was many months ago. But on the flip side of that, the interest that we can expect to earn on our savings is creeping up. And so if you don't have a savings habit now, if you don't have an emergency fund now could be a great time to start saving, because the amount of interest that you can expect to get on your savings will have increased also.
Well, thank you, Timi. It's a lot of food for thought for our listeners, because if people are feeling a bit, I guess, like needing to boost their number confidence, they might feel scared about the money, but it's really important to have these conversations. And so thank you for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that was awesome having Timi on. And I think why I really value people like Timi is that nowadays, all sorts of people, young people, adults, have access to technology, their phones. And as soon as you log on to your Instagram, very quickly you can be watching Timi explaining how savings works and how you should think about getting a loan and the value of checking your pay slips. And it just means that personal finance is at the tip of your fingertips.
Yeah, it's great because he's like helping people, think about the finance and also giving advice. I think it can be so overwhelming, the financial markets, and, especially if you're having issues with your finances, it's really hard to know where to go. As you say, it's so great that people like Timi are sort of doing things to support people understand finances. So if you're one of those people and you're like, "Do you know what, I need some support here, I'm not that confident with my personal finance, but I want to get better," check Timi out at Mr. Money Jar. You can see him on his Twitter and his Instagram. Instagram is where he's the most active.
And a big thanks to Timi again, and it was fabulous to have him on this episode of our podcast where we've teamed up with Experian.
So whether it's bills, budgeting, or even baking, maths is part of everyday life for all of us. Experian is on a mission to help the nation improve their financial health, and we know that good number skills and confidence are a gateway to helping you get there.
And that's why Experian is a proud supporter of our Maths Appeal podcast and long-running partner of the charity National Numeracy, and working together to help you fulfill your potential.
And speaking of fulfilling our potential, it's time to solve the Maths Appeal problem for this week.
So the problem was Susan leaves £3,000 in the bank for 2 years and it earns 2% interest per year compounded. And you had to calculate the total amount that Susan had in the bank after 2 years. I wanted to come to you, Susan, obviously,
Yes,
to
obviously.
ask how you felt or how you think people feel when they see this problem.
I'm thinking about my students here. A lot of the time, especially if they are, say, students who are doing the foundation paper, it's a little bit on the lower level, the understanding of compound interest is quite a leap, because a lot of the time I think they see the 2% and they just think, take the £3,000, find 2% for 1 year, then take the £3,000 again, then find 2% for the following year. And that's the thing, is that understanding that compound means whatever you've added the year before, that's your new value, and then you're going to find 2% of that following amount. And that's where I think the understanding of compound interest is super important. And so for me, I understand it, but I know that for a number of people, if you don't understand that key term, that key term compound interest, you're not going to be able to understand what to do for this question.
So what sort of topics are involved in this question?
Percentage increase, but then having a new total and then doing a percentage increase or decrease on that value. It's also thinking about time and how that things change over time. But also you can, and I didn't do it this way, but I don't know whether you did, you can also bring in the idea of powers as well into percentages as well.
I'm now intrigued. How did you solve the problem?
So the way I thought about it was, I thought 1 year, I put it into the bank, what is going to come out after that 1 year? So I was like, okay, 100% of my value is £3,000. To increase it by 2%, the new value is going to effectively be 102%. And so I then convert that to a decimal, and that is 1.02. Multiply 3,000 by 1.02, and that gives me £3,060. So that's how much I'll have after 1 year. You could have done it where you just found 2% of £3,000, which is £60, and added it to your original value. That's another way of doing it. And then I then took that value, the new amount of that for that year one, which is 3,060, and then I multiplied that again by 1.02 because I'm finding 2% of that new value and then adding it on, which then gives me £3,121.20. That's what I got as my answer.
I agree with the answer. My method is effectively the same, but I have, I guess, just made it a straight way of getting to the answer. So mine was £3,000 multiplied by 1.02 squared, because it's 2 years being compounded, which gives us the answer. So £3,000 times 1.02 to the power of 2. And this is actually a method that... Yeah, and also, some students, they say, I'm a Seagull, just to do the quick method. And this method means that you have to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I think your method is better for someone trying to understand it from first principles.
So the 1.02 that you multiply by, that represents 102%. So that's your new value. And then the powers that you're talking about, Bobby, that's to do with the years. So if we wanted to find for 5 years, like how much would I have in the bank after 5 years? If we want to do one multiplication on the way that you just said, it'd be 1.02 to the power of 5. So anyone wanting to explore that in more detail, have fun with that. But the power effectively tells you how many years that is. Hopefully that's kind of helped people understand the idea of compound interest, because compound interest works in the sense that, you know, obviously if our money's getting bigger, but also there's this idea of depreciation when things lose their value. It's a similar kind of thing where you've got a new value, and then if you're taking off a percentage, you're taking off the percentage of the new value, which is a key thing to sort of have in the back of your mind, because that £3,000 starts as a thing, but then it changes every year.
Yes, that's the key thing.
Okay, so we've done some maths, we've got some solutions. We would love to hear what you think, how you worked it out. Did you do it a different way? Did you use a calculator? Did you do Excel? Did you use pen and paper? And please do share on our Twitter and our Instagram at Maths Appeal, because we want this to be a conversation. And hopefully as well, if there's anything you wanted cleared up, please do get in touch with us. And now, as we have done some maths and we've got our solutions ready, our brains are warm and we are ready for more information from our very own Mr. Seagull.
The fact today is actually related to compound interest. Listen in. I'm a big fan of personal and self-development, and there's a concept known as continuous improvement. And I'm going to show you how compound interest can work in our favor here. Imagine we're trying to get better at, let's say, how to bake or to dance or to sing or to tidy up the house. And what you can tell people is, how about you just improve by 1% per day? And that could be a New Year's resolution. I want to improve by 1% per day. And that doesn't sound that notable, or perhaps not even noticeable. But over the long run, that can be very powerful. So earlier on, we talked about that concept of 1.02 or 1.01. So 1% per day would be 1.01. And imagine you got 1% better every day. That would be 1.01 to the power of how many days in a year? 365. And what happens is this, you think actually, 1% per day, it's only a tiny improvement. But over the course of a year, you're going to end up 37 times better by the time you're done. And obviously, realistically, I'm not going to be able to lift 37 times the amount in the gym that I did at the start of the year. I mean, I'd be like, the Incredible Hulk times 100. But it just shows a small difference per day compounded makes a significant impact on us.
Oh, so that regular
and the flip side,
practice.
if you get worse as well, imagine you get worse by 1% per day. So that's 0.99 to the power of 365. By the end of the year, you are only 3% of what you were at the start of the year. So you just lost, so you've wasted away your baking skills.
No,
So actually, that shows you power of compound interest is really powerful.
So it's about regular, consistent practice goes a very, very long way. Is that what you're trying to say, Bobby?
Spot on.
Love that. Not just a bit of a maths fact, but also a bit of life coaching. Thank you very much. So this has been episode 6 of the Maths Appeal series in partnership with National Numeracy and Experian.
And if you are following National Numeracy on their campaigns, we'd love you to get involved and take part in their National Numeracy Challenge, where you can try to build your own number confidence.
It's never too late. The whole point of this is to try and encourage anyone who thinks, do you know what, I've been finding maths difficult my whole life, it's never too late to start. So that's kind of our big aim with Maths Appeal and National Numeracy and this whole series.
And as always, we genuinely do look forward to seeing your comments on social media at Maths Appeal on Twitter and Instagram. And you'll be excited that our next episode, number 7, is going to be on Best Buy. So thinking about good shopping deals.
You've been listening to Maths Appeal with me, Susan Okereke and Bobby Seagull, and the music's by Kelly Okereke, and our wonderful producer is Jenny Nelson.
We'll see you soon to solve more maths problems together.